Good evening to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to this evening update on the tropics on what is now Tropical Storm Bertha in the Gulf. Yes, our second named storm of the Atlantic hurricane season is here, and this will continue to track towards the Gulf Coast, and we are likely going to be dealing with a tropical storm here, or almost certainly, for the Gulf Coast, either Louisiana or Mississippi, later on in the week. And I think it's pretty much now confirmed because of the fact that Tropical Depression 2 has officially developed into Tropical Storm Bertha this evening. So let's take a dive into things and see the current stats on what is now Bertha here in the Atlantic. Maximum sustained winds at 40 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure of 1,004 millibars, located at 28.6 north and 86.0 west, moving west-northwest at 3 miles an hour. And this upgrade to tropical storm came from a special update from the National Hurricane Center because of hurricane hunters, which are inside the storm. And I'm actually going to show you the hurricane hunter data in just a little bit. But the hurricane hunter recon is inside the storm now, and they found decent enough support for tropical storm intensity. So here we are, Tropical Storm Bertha. Here's a satellite shot of how Bertha is doing this evening. And it is definitely looking better, looking more like an organized tropical storm here, even though it's still dealing with wind shear from the north, which is going to have to fight off. And it's going to continue to fight off throughout its lifespan now. But interestingly enough, you do see that we have some pretty decent convective pockets here just to the south of the low-level center. And you really see, especially in the last few frames here, this convective pocket really getting going. We have some nice deep convection blowing up with this storm, which is a first, especially for the last day or so. We've been dealing with quite a bit of dry air with this storm, but looks like that dry air is now mixed out enough that we're starting to see some pretty decent deep convection, and that's seemingly having an effect on the low-level center here. In fact, some of the latest recon data is indicating that the low-level center might actually be trying to dip more towards the south, and we're seeing a few southerly jogs, potentially putting the low-level center closer to the deep convection here. So in general, what I'm trying to say is this storm is definitely looking more organized today, and definitely looking like a storm that is slowly strengthening. And now because of that, we have Tropical Storm Bertha. And we do have recon data inside the storm right now. In fact, looks like they just made another center pass, but the previous center pass with the dropson before that got a pressure of 1,003 millibars. And I do believe that the latest extrapolated pressure data actually has pressure readings down into the 990. So the pressure is dropping, and you can even see some of the flight level winds as well. Off to the southeast here, some flight level winds as high as 45 knots. So absolutely in line with a recon data that is sufficient enough for tropical storm intensity. And here's a look at a dropson that was taken not long ago. They found a surface pressure of 1,002 millibars, so actually lower than the 1,003 that recon recorded, with winds of 22 knots too. So that could actually be extrapolated and factored with the wind down to 1,000 millibars. So the pressure is dropping, the winds are increasing. We are definitely dealing with a strengthening storm right now, and we're probably going to continue to see some slow strengthening here, according to the National Hurricane Center. Again, going to maybe turn to the northwest a little bit, although bend back towards the west. But as I mentioned before, we are already starting to see some southerly jogs here as this storm continues to organize and try to align more with the deep convection that's blowing off. So maybe we might see some southerly jogs here with the track, which will obviously have an impact as well on impacts here to the Gulf Coast. But tropical storm watches are once again in effect all the way from the tip of the mouth of the Mississippi River in eastern Louisiana, stretching up along the entire portion of eastern Louisiana, through the entire Gulf Coast, stretching pretty much all the way to western Florida here. And now that we have Tropical Storm Bertha, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to get some, or probably a lot, of tropical storm warnings to be issued as well. And that's probably going to happen in the coming hours. So with that being said, let's talk impacts here. I mainly want to go over impacts now that we're talking about a tropical storm. And I talked about the impacts earlier in my video update from a few hours ago, but I thought, why not kind of rehash them again, because we are dealing with a land impact storm. We're going to see a landfall from this, and obviously with that comes impact. So the four main key messages from the National Hurricane Center here, depression expected to strengthen to a storm, but it's clearly the National Hurricane Center has not updated these key messages to include Tropical Storm Bertha, so that is outdated. Number one has already come to pass, but we do have storm surge watches in effect for Alabama, Mississippi, and southeastern Louisiana, where we will see some storm surge, and I'll show you the expected storm surge values in a little bit. And then, obviously, Louisiana, the entire coast of Louisiana should still monitor things, but Texas as well. You guys are not necessarily 100% out of the woods yet. You guys are definitely still in the cone of uncertainty, and this is expected to still at least be a tropical depression as this approaches the Texas coastline. And as I mentioned before, given what this storm is doing now, we are starting to see some southerly jogs a little bit in the track here. So if we start seeing enough southerly shifts, maybe this will barely just scrape the coastline of Louisiana here, and maybe Texas is not out of the woods just yet in terms of getting a decent storm out of this. But it's all going to come down to how well Bertha is able to align itself and fight off against the shear here over the next few hours, and we will definitely be watching and seeing how Bertha does. But either way, Texas not out of the woods just yet, and the National Hurricane Center mentions that. And even if we're not talking about a tropical storm, impacting Texas or western Louisiana, we're definitely going to have flooding and impacts to rainfall felt across the entire northern Gulf here. And let's actually start there with the rainfall expectations. Here are the flash flooding risks areas highlighted for the next 5 days, and this is from the Weather Prediction Center. And again, all the way from the central Texas coastline stretching all the way into the southeast here, at least a marginal risk of flash flooding, with obviously the biggest threat for flash flooding in southeastern Louisiana right now. And given that's where the expected landfall will be, that's where, logically you would think would be the highest threat for rainfall. And the actual rainfall totals right now, generally highest amounts over southeastern Louisiana here. Most areas expecting up to 2 to 4 inches of rain. Might see some locally higher amounts here right near the coast of southeastern Louisiana. Mississippi and Alabama and western Florida are probably not going to get as high of the rainfall totals, because going back to the satellite here, as you can clearly see, we do have quite a bit of northerly shear, so that's keeping the system very lopsided with all the convection on the southern side, so that's going to limit the rainfall totals for more northern sections of the coast. But Louisiana still probably going to deal with quite a decent bit of rainfall, and that's probably going to stretch into the Texas coastline and probably some of Texas as well over the next few days. Now, just how much rainfall we're going to see is still kind of up in the air, and we're probably going to have a better idea of just how much rainfall we will see for the entire coastline here over the next few days as things continue to impress. But rainfall is definitely going to be a risk, as well as flash flooding, naturally, as a part of tropical cyclones, but also storm surge as well. Storm surge will be a pretty big threat too. We're not going to be dealing with, very, crazy storm surge, but as I mentioned before, and as the National Hurricane Center says, we do have storm surge watches in effect for Mississippi and Alabama and southeastern Louisiana, and that's where the highest storm surge values are right now, anywhere from the mouth of the Mississippi River to the Alabama-Florida border, expecting up to 2 to 4 feet of storm surge, which is not, record-breaking or damaging. I mean, it is still damaging, actually. Actually, no. 2 to 4 feet might not seem like a lot, but it's still probably going to cause some coastal flooding, and it is still going to be damaging to some extent, as flooding naturally is. And then from Morgan City, Louisiana, stretching all the way to the Florida Big Bend here, anywhere from 1 to 3 feet of storm surge expected as well. And I'd imagine as well that these values here in southeastern Louisiana, between the mouth of the Mississippi and maybe Morgan City here, might go up as well over the next day or so, depending on whether or not Bertha might actually try to shift more to the south here, if it is able to strengthen more. So lots to watch here with the storm surge and the general impacts, though they will change, but just highlighting right now, storm surge expected, and definitely a threat to take seriously, as well as, of course, tropical storm force winds, which will probably be felt along a decent bit of the coastline here, with the highest chances right now, especially over southeastern Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. That's where we have a 30 to 40% chance of tropical storm force winds, but obviously these chances are probably going to go up as well, and especially so given that the fact that this map is probably updated or outdated from before we actually got the upgrade to Bertha. But tropical storm force winds definitely likely here along the Gulf Coast, and I mean, we do have tropical storm watches after all, and they're probably going to get upgraded to tropical storm warnings shortly. All right, so really quickly, we're going to go more in depth with the models tomorrow, but I do still want to mention and take a look at some of the models tonight and see how things progress here. We're going to stick with the HAFS A, which is a hurricane model, and the HAFS A model here tends to be very accurate, especially now that we have recon and recon data input into the model. So let's see what the HAFS A does here. So you do see some strengthening. We see the pressure get into the 990s, 997 millibars is what the forecast is. It gets actually to 996 millibars, and we see the wind increase to roughly around 55 knots, which would be 65 miles per hour. So very likely we could still see a moderate to maybe even reaching upper end scale of tropical storm here before it then will probably track on off to the northwest here. And the HAFS A is actually expecting a landfall near Pensacola, Florida, which is interesting, given that the National Hurricane Center is expecting a landfall in eastern Louisiana. So a little bit of a disagreement there. And then it kind of does something weird with the low pressure here. I think this is probably convective bias, but in general, we should probably expect Bertha here to move on off to the northwest and begin to bend off towards the west at some point. And yeah, this will probably strengthen a little bit. So that's what you would expect here. Bertha probably going to strengthen. But the main point of the update tonight is we have Bertha. It is here, and of course, impacts are coming to the Gulf Coast. Tropical storm force winds, storm surge, rainfall, all of that. So we will continue to keep you updated here tonight and throughout the day tomorrow on YouTube and Twitter. So if you haven't followed me already, make sure to do that. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to click the notification bell as well so you can get videos the second I upload them online. And of course, follow me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it as well, so you can get consistent updates throughout the day, so you don't have to wait for whenever I upload on YouTube. So nice to follow me on both platforms there. And I'm promoting my social media, whatever. Obviously I'm trying to gain followers, but I also think it might be a useful tool for you because I hopefully am trying to put out as much useful information out there as possible. With that being said, though, I'm going to wrap it up for tonight's video. Obviously, keeping an eye out on the tropics, and if you are along the Gulf Coast, make sure to continue to prep your hurricane plans ready as Bertha approaches, and will continue to approach over the next few days. We're likely not dealing with a very strong system here, but impacts will be felt nonetheless, and we will continue to keep you updated here so long as we have a tropical threat to watch in Bertha. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your night. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I'll talk with you guys again tomorrow.